Welcome to session 2 of OMI 302, that's Introduction to Production Management. We're going to continue with the previous session where we started seeing we considered the idea of production. Then we got to what a production system is, and we're looking at some classifications of production systems. So we earlier saw the case of job shop production, and then the case of the batch production. So in this second session, we're going to look at the mass production. Now, I think the name speaks for itself, mass production. It's just a typical kind of production system where the production is done in huge quantities, in large quantities, compared to the case of batch production and then the case of the job shop. Now, mass is relative, so I can't put so much, let's say, some level of parameters, but let's say on the average, producing about 1,000 units of an item could be considered as mass production. But hey, it is industry specific or organization specific. So because one mass production of one organization could be, some peanut for some other organization. So, but generally the idea is when we're producing in very large quantities, that is what we mean by, 1 million, 2 million, 20,000, sizes of items. Now, so generally it has some advantages, and I think the most visible one would be the cost. It's awesome. When you're producing in large quantities like this, definitely your unit cost or cost of production would be relatively lesser compared to the previous cases. And we also say that it has the higher rate of production with reduced cycle time. The cycle time is how much it takes to produce each item. Now, normally under this kind of production system, we adopt what we call the line production system, where items, you consider the case of items rolling on conveyor belt or moving from one station to another on some, automated system. And so because of these ideas or these technologies adopted in these kind of production system, the time taken to produce an item is relatively lesser, and that is advantageous. The lesser the cycle time, the more output you produce and the more you save on time. Now, then higher capacity utilization due to line balancing. And so when we talk of this idea of line balancing, it just refers to that process or that idea where each workstation or where work is done, each system, each workstation on the entire production line use the same amount of time. So for instance, if we're making, let's say, some products, say orange juice, and we peel the orange at some point and we squeeze and we pack and we do all that, whatever is happening at a place, we all use the same amount of time. So if it is 4 minutes, it's 4 minutes at site 1, 4 minutes at site 2, and so there's high utilization of the capacity. Idle time is reduced significantly. There's less skilled operators required here, and it's obvious because we say that normally in the mass production we use more automated means of production. So you just need a few hands to just help keep things in order, keep the system in check. You don't necessarily need so much skilled operators to be here. That will be costing you so much. Now, there's also low process inventory. This is critical. There is low process inventory in the sense that you cannot afford to have some waiting or some bottlenecks in the system. The system must flow because we're saying that we balance the line and each workstation must have the same amount of time in production. And so once there is a certain delay in any of the workstations, the entire production process is going to be disrupted. And so you notice that everything flows. And so you hardly find work piled up at a certain station waiting to be done. And so it reduces the inventory, the work in process inventory. Now, manufacturing per unit cost is low, like I said earlier. Now, some limitations here typically is the breakdown of one machine will stop the entire production line. Yes, because it's a line system and the production moves from one point to another within a certain unit of time. And so if there is this any stoppage, any bottleneck, collapses the entire system, and that will be a big blow to the producer. Now, the line layout needs major change with the changes in the product design. And whenever we would want to alter the design of whatever we're producing, then it culminates into major changes in the entire line. Okay, so here, then this should sense, we should bring in the idea that we do not really have the luxury of flexibility in this kind of production system. Flexibility is quite, limited. Now, there's high investment in production facilities. Yes, you think of automation, it doesn't come easy. It comes at huge cost. And so, now the cycle time is determined by the lowest operation. Now, that's some limitation. The idea is we want to make sure that work doesn't stop at some point. And so, if we are going to say that, well, it will take us 2 minutes to produce maybe one aspect of a product, and then when it moves to the second stage, it will take 4 minutes, then the cycle time we will consider for all the stations would be 4 minutes. Because if I produce 2 minutes here, and then I assume that the entire line should use 2 minutes, whereas one station will use 4 minutes, you notice that there's always going to be queuing at the station where you would have higher time to use. And so the slowest operation determines the cycle time, and that is some disadvantage. No one would want to be dealing with delays anyway. Okay, I hope that was understandable. Now, the next one is continuous production. When we talk of continuous production, we are looking at the kind of production run that is seemingly unending. If probably it would take a whole week for a production run, let's say 7 days, once the process kickstarts, it doesn't stop until the entire period is up. And so we say production is continuous. The system keeps going on and on and on and on and on until our entire production is completed, or whatever number. Now, so for continuous production systems, the volume is really a determinant. Now, so organizations that adopt this kind of production system are those that produce in large volumes. When I'm talking of large, I mean large in whatever huge sense or humongous sense of large. Now, continuous production is used in the following circumstances or instances. We say that we have dedicated plants and equipment with zero flexibility, because we are saying that we can hardly make, once production starts, you can make any alterations to the system. And so there is actually, let's say apparently, no flexibility. So we need to get the design right. Everything needs to be done correctly before production starts. Now, material handling is fully automated, and so because it is that continuous, we can really use humans. And so we say that it is fully automated. That doesn't mean that we have zero human involvement. Well, but you have them in some minor, let's say technicians or people who could just check on the system, but the human or labor doesn't really play any significant role in this kind of production systems. Now, the process follows a predetermined sequence of operations, and so once it is set up and the system is automated in a certain manner, nothing changes and it follows a certain sequence. Look at the cases of organizations that produce, let's say, paper, or maybe you produce like 400 kilometers of paper. No, I mean the papers we use for printing. They produce in large rolls, very large rolls before they are cut into pieces. Those production runs take days, very long time to be done, and it follows certain specific sequence. Planning and scheduling is routine. It's a routine action, because we produce, there is no flexibility, and I can confidently say that there is lack of variety. We produce just one item. And so once we have a master plan, a blueprint, that works for us all the time, it's just the same. We just keep repeating the same, so it becomes a routine something. Now, there is some advantages of these. There's standardization of product and process sequence, higher capacity utilization due to line balancing, and I think by now we understand what we mean by line balancing. Each workstation using the same amount of time, and work just flows in that order. If you do not really understand this, probably just consider the case of any organization that uses this conveyor belt, and you find people or workers at some particular stand. Work must follow within a certain unity. So once this is done, it moves in that order. That's what we mean by that kind of. And so a specific time is stipulated for each workstation. Now, manpower is not required for material handling, and it is completely automated. And so, it's an advantage because, in a nice sense. You don't have your machines going on leave. You don't have your machines, you may just need to maintain them and in that order. But human beings cannot work continuously for 8 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours without taking a break. But the machines wouldn't do that. But in some sense, it has its disadvantages too, I must say. Now, persons with limited skills can be used on the production line, and it's understandable. The unit cost is lower due to high volume of production, and I think we also understand this by now. Now, for the limitations, the flexibility to accommodate and process different products do not exist. So it's just one thing. It's one thing we produce over and over again, and the system doesn't make room for any kind of alteration, no matter how small it would be. But it's quite a problem. So supposing you get it wrong and the production run starts, that's it. That mistake is going to run through the entire process, and that's quite a big problem. Now, very high investment cost in setting up the flow lines. Now, acquiring these machines and everything comes at a very huge financial commitment. And product differentiation is limited. It's the same product that we are producing. Very standardized items. You do not find differences in colors, in design, in weight, and size. Everything, hypothetically, is the same. There would be some, variations, but we'll call them the normal variations out of what happens. But you don't see significant changes. Everything should be the same. The color, the writings, the designs, everything, the weight, the size, the volume, everything should be the same. And so there's barely any room for product differentiation. So if we've seen these production systems, now how do we blend the idea of production and management? Now, I think from Management 101, we would all understand what management is, the idea of planning, controlling, doing all those principles of management, putting them together. That is the idea of management. We've also seen production, which is the idea of taking an input, taking it through a transformation process, and it comes out as an output. Now, how do we merge these two? When we put these two concepts together, we have what we call production management. How we are able to effectively manage production. And so it says that production management deals with decision making related to production processes, so that the resulting goods or services are produced according to specifications. And that's it. It's that easy. So you always need to make sure that you're producing in the right quality of products or services in right quantity at the right time, and then at the right cost. The right cost would mean the least possible manufacturing cost. And an effective production management system should give a firm competitive advantage over the global competitors. Now, in fact, these characteristics or these objectives that we've outlined here are basically basis on which any firm can compete globally. Think about it. Now I think we've moved beyond the case of just competing on price and advertisement. Now, a firm that produces high quality items builds goodwill. Now, if you're producing that very quality items at very low cost, you're going to be making higher revenues. You're getting out the right quantities. You're not just keeping excess production or excess quantities that will be increasing your inventory cost and everything. You do notice that it all culminates into giving you some competitive edge and even moves you into the global market. And so it is the objective of every firm to produce within this scope, and that is what we are talking about regarding production management. Now, so under production management, we're just going to fit in production under the principles of management. So we will look at designing the system, the product design, the process design, facility location. If I want a certain product, how do I want the product to look like? What should be the size, the weight, the height? All these will come under the product design. Now, process design, how do I intend to go about coming out with this product or making the product? So what are the processes? How do we, connect them one way or the other? Where do I locate my facility? Where should I site my factory? After siting my factory, how do I arrange my equipment so that there is efficiency? Now, job design, how do I apportion job, get job done give the right quantity of just that you don't overburden whether it's your machine, you don't overrun the machines or your employees. How do you even evaluate the performance of the work being done? All these things are under the designing the system. And also planning, it also involves, considering how the present facility can be used to meet customer design. And if you don't plan, the typical statement we say, if you fail to plan, you know what happens. You're definitely going to fail. So all these things are principles of management that we are fitting into the idea of production. You need to control the system. How do you manage human resource effectively? How do you manage materials? How do you manage information flow? And most importantly, how do you manage quality? Now, all these things all come under production management. How we're able to fit in the principle, the idea of management into the concept of production. When we put these two together, we have what we call production management. So in a generic sense, these are the main activities of production management. You organize work, select processes, arranging layouts, locating facilities, designing jobs, measuring performance, controlling quality, scheduling work, managing inventory, planning production. These are top 10 activities we really would consider. Doesn't mean that if you find other activities, they don't come under activities of production management. But these are really very significant. Any organization that is performing very well on these sets of activities, stand a higher chance of going global. Moving or venturing out beyond their geographical setting. So talking about moving beyond your geographical setting, we're looking at the idea of globalization. Now, why would a firm want to, go global? Well, in the first place, I think there are newer opportunities out there. So some firms will want to take advantage of favorable costs. For instance, labor may be cheaper in some parts of the world. So you may want to, take advantage of such opportunities. You'd also gain access to international markets. So you have a broader customer target that you can have. For instance, if I'm producing in Ghana, currently with about almost 28 million people, if I should venture into Nigeria, that is getting opening opportunities to some extra 200 million people, and that's good news for any producer to improve on your operations. Now, to be more responsive to changes in demand. Exactly. So, like I was saying, if you're used to producing about 1 million output a month, you can venture into other markets that would increase your demand, and that will make you more responsive to changes. You can have increased demand from other sources to build reliable sources of supply. So you can move into other areas and get new sources of supply, and that is a good reason to go global. Now, to also keep abreast with the latest trends in technologies, and that is one. Now, not all technologies are found in every part of the world. If there are newer paradigms, you talk of the Internet of Things, IoTs, and internetizing production, call it the Industry 4.0 paradigms. You don't find all of these. In fact, some of these paradigms or technologies are still under research, but being adopted fairly in some parts of the world. And so if you really would want to be a partaker in these new trends, and it's not yet in operation where you are, you may want to venture out where they are being in operation, and you can also adopt them, and gradually you can come back to your setting. And so what are some of the things that facilitate going global? You find out that most significant of these is the WTO, we call the World Trade Organization, just doing awesome jobs in opening up, heavily protected boundaries in certain industries, and so you can find investors or people going into all these areas, and it's a reason. Previously it's difficult to enter into certain markets, but you can find openings coming in. Look at the case of the EU getting into agreement with the Ghana government to open up the importing items from the EU. We also getting into the markets, and that's awesome. So producers within the Ghanaian, context can also take the advantage and move into these foreign markets. And these are some of the facilitators. Now, in the internet and then other technologies. Now, due to the case of this awesome www, the World Wide Web, we can do business sitting anywhere. And then it has broken a lot of trade barriers. You do online, what we call the e-commerce, online business transactions, and you can transact business seated in Ghana, in the US, and anywhere, in any part of the globe. And so these are some of the facilitators. And then the new paradigms and then innovations, newer innovations coming into the system. And so, they're all things resulting in organizations wanting to go out there to also experience other things, to explore other emerging markets, we'll say, in some cases. So I think you enjoyed this lesson, I hope. So we'll end it here and we'll continue in the next session. Bye.